Every town has its secrets, but some secrets are too dark to be spoken aloud. We're following the trail of rumors and whispers to the most mysterious small towns on Earth, places where the locals look the other way, where strange events occur with alarming frequency, and where the past refuses to stay buried. Are you ready to uncover the truth that lurks beneath the surface of these seemingly idyllic communities?
Starting off our list today, we have Athens, Texas, home to Reverend Fuller, who it seems took a dark turn the day the circus rolled into town. It is said that on that day, a wagon carrying a cargo of monkeys tipped over and the animals escaped into the woods, where some were later captured by Reverend Fuller. Locals tell that Fuller kept the monkeys in a cage on a plot of land he owned called Fuller Park, where eventually he began using them for highly unethical experimentation. It was said for years he tortured the animals until they eventually died and were buried on the land. Later, when Fuller passed, he and his wife were buried in the park as well. Many locals who had heard the rumors of Fuller's heinous acts went out to explore the land, driven by curiosity. Many also recounted that while exploring the area, they had found a series of entrances to underground tunnels, all of which eventually met up underground, forming the shape of a pentagram. It has also been said that the road leading into the park and the park itself, where the monkeys along with Fuller and his wife are buried, is extremely haunted. Not by Fuller's ghost, but rather the ghost of the monkeys who had to endure the unforgiving nature of Fuller's torture under the guise of scientific exploration. Next, we have the tragedy of McCarthy, Alaska, an event that took place in 1983, in which a man named Hastings had planned to wipe out the entire population of the small town. About 8 months prior to the incident, Hastings had moved to the small mining town that had a population of just 22 people. On February 29th, Hastings went over to his friend Chris Richards' home and fired 2 projectiles at the man. One hit him just above his eye and the other in the neck. Richards was, however, able to escape after defending himself with a kitchen blade and ran to get help. After firing at Richards, Hastings went to the airstrip where most of the town had gathered, awaiting the weekly mail delivery. He hit 7 individuals with projectiles from a handheld weapon. 6 passed and 1 suffered severe injury. When Hastings was eventually apprehended 30 kilometers outside of the town, he admitted that he had planned on taking out the entire population but was ultimately unsuccessful. He had also wanted to hijack the mail plane so that he could fly to Glen Allen, where he would steal a truck and blow himself up along with the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline Pump Station. Hastings was sentenced to 634 years in prison for his crimes. Next on our list today, we have San Jeronimo de Juarez, Mexico, a town with a population of just 7,300, in which Oscar Flores took the lives of 12 individuals, including a member of his own family. The incident started in the man's home, where he ended the life of his nephew with a kitchen blade. When police arrived on the scene, Flores was able to escape after he beat one officer with a large rock and stole the weapon off another. Flores then used that weapon to continue his violent rampage, firing at random people throughout the town. Eventually, the townspeople turned on Flores and began chasing him. While trying to outrun them, Flores lost the weapon he had stolen and somehow also lost his clothes. He faced off against the townspeople naked, armed with only a large blade, but when police arrived at the scene, they were able to successfully apprehend Flores, who was badly injured in the process and died in hospital not long after. After his death, it was discovered that 7 years prior to his final violent spree, Flores, who had a long history of substance abuse, had taken the life of his brother-in-law as well as 5 other individuals in Tijuana in the years prior. Next up, we have the 10-hour killing spree that took place in June of 2010 in the small villages of Cumbria in England. It all started early in the morning when 56-year-old taxi driver Derek Bird drove to his brother's home and fired 11 projectiles into his head using a handheld weapon. He then drove to the home of his family's tax agent, who he thought had been conspiring against him alongside his brother, and took the man's life in a similar fashion. After the incident, it seems as though Bird just snapped. He began driving through the villages and towns, targeting fellow cab drivers. 1 died and 3 were injured before the police caught wind. Somehow, however, Bird was able to avoid capture. He ditched the cops and continued driving to the next town, where again he began firing at random people, ending the lives of another 9 men and women and injuring another 7. Eventually, out of gas and out of ammo, missing his vehicle's front tire, Bird got out of his car and began walking into the woods. An hour later, police located his body, and it was determined that the man, unable to live with his actions or perhaps face the consequences, had had taken his own life. Next up on our list today, we have the small town of Luxio, located in France and home to just 130 residents. In 1989, it was resident Christian Dornier who landed the town on this list after a mental break led him to a 2-hour killing spree in which he ended the lives of 14 individuals. While the reality of the incident was shocking, after the event took place, many of the locals admitted to having suspected such behavior was inevitable from Dornier. In fact, before the killings even took place, the town's council had suggested to Dornier's family that he should seek psychological help for his disposition. Unfortunately, the family did not listen to the council, and on July 12th, Dornier fired a handheld weapon at his sister and then opened fire on his mother and father. Dornier then got in his car, where he spent the next 2 hours driving around town, firing his weapon at anyone who crossed his path. He was eventually caught by police after sustaining an injury from an officer's weapon. Dornier did survive the arrest and went to trial, but he was never convicted for his crimes. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity. In 1991, Dornier was checked into a psychiatric hospital in France, where he remains to this day. Next up, we have the small town of Hungerford, England, population 5,000. On August 10th of 1984, yet another 2-hour killing spree occurred that caused the deaths of 17 individuals, including the assailant's family dog, and it also badly injured 15 more. The killing started around 12 p.m. when Michael Robert Ryan abducted a woman from a local park, took her to a secluded area, and fired 13 projectiles at her, ending her life. Michael then fled the scene and made his way back to his neighborhood. When he arrived at his home, he ended the life of the family dog with a projectile and then began loading up his car with handheld weapons. He tried to leave, but his car wouldn't start, so out of anger, he grabbed a can of gasoline, soaked the house, and set it on fire. He then began walking down the road, aiming at anyone he saw. When his mother arrived on the scene, she yelled out to her son, begging him to stop and asking why he was doing what he was doing. He took her life and then fled the area. He eventually took his own life in an empty building that had been surrounded by law enforcement after Michael had been spotted inside. The incident changed the history of England, as shortly after this took place, the country implemented much stricter weapons laws. Next on our list today, we have the unsolved mystery of the Bedford, Massachusetts highway killings. In March of 1988, in the small town, which now has a population of around 13,000, young women started to go missing. The disappearances went on for months, but no one could figure out why they were happening. It wasn't until July of that same year that some clarity began to take place, when the bodies of 9 out of the 11 missing women were discovered along the town's highway. It was revealed that the women who had lost their lives all had ties to illegal substance distribution as well as sex work. Authorities determined that foul play had led to the deaths, and a case was opened in the hopes of locating the remaining 2 missing women and apprehending the killer or killers involved in the deaths of the discovered 9. Unfortunately, neither were ever found, and to this day, the case remains an unsolved mystery that continues to baffle law enforcement and plague the small town of Bedford, Massachusetts. Next up, and starting off our top 3 today, we have the small town of Burke Canyon in Idaho. The town was founded in 1887 after rich deposits of silver and lead had been discovered in the area. The architecture of the town was strange, as it had to accommodate the fact that the town had been built inside an incredibly thin canyon, which at some points was only 300 feet wide, but they made it work. For a while at least, as just a few years after the town opened its doors, it became devastated by an avalanche, which was quickly followed up by a labor strike. A labor strike that ended in a standoff between the miners and the mine owners, during which a projectile accidentally set off a large amount of dynamite, which caused a mill to explode and ended the lives of 6 people. A few years later, disgruntled miners deliberately blew up another mill, claiming the lives of even more. The incidents were followed up by 2 massive natural fires, a major flood, and another large avalanche, causing the fall of Burke Canyon, which is known today as nothing much more than a ghost town with some odd buildings and a very violent past. Next up, we have Atta, New York. If the town sounds familiar, it might be because you are vaguely remembering stories you've heard about the town's prison with the same name, which of course is what landed the small town on today's list in the first place. The Atta Maximum Security Prison was home to many of the world's most infamous infamous criminals, including American killer David Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam, who was responsible for at least 8 deaths, after which he consumed the flesh of his victims, and Mark David Chapman, the man who killed Beatles legend John Lennon. In 1971, the inmates of the prison, which had been known for its inhumane treatment of the prisoners, took control in an effort to negotiate for better living conditions. The state responded with extreme force, leading to the deaths of at least 34 inmates and 9 hostages. Okay, this last town is Baltimore, Maryland, and while it's not small, what happened there is definitely shocking. Have you ever heard of Joe Menthe? Well, if you haven't, listen up, and if you're eating, put it down. Joe Menthe was an American serial killer who claimed to have been responsible for violating and ending the lives of 13 separate individuals. If right now you're wondering what he did with the bodies of the deceased, I will tell you, but I'm not happy about it. He made them into burgers and served those burgers to members of the public at his roadside open pit barbecue stand. He was arrested after he asked a friend to help him dispose of a body he had been hiding in a warehouse for over a month. The friend obviously reported him to the police, and Joe was convicted of 2 killings despite confessing to 13. However, research did later confirm 3 more of his victims. Joe was sentenced to life without parole, thank God, and eventually died in his cell on August 5th of 2017 at the age of 62. Shepherdstown, West Virginia, is arguably one of the most haunted places in America, according to those who have visited the town and experienced its dark paranormal atmosphere. The town was actually formed long before America became a country. Well, 46 years at least, and it was originally named Mecklenburg, but that changed when Thomas Shepard obtained the land in 1734. It's considered a historic Civil War area, as just 3 miles up from the town, the Antietam Battle, the most gruesome battle of the Civil War, was fought. A hotel in the town is also home to some pretty dark deaths. In one instance, a man took his own life after losing a card game. In another, a young man was killed for winning. Both men are said to roam around the hotel, and many claim to hear the younger of the two crying out for his mother, as he did during his last living moments. But perhaps the most famous sighting in the town is that of a dark, shadowy figure that lurks in the clock tower after dark. Oh, and the bakery is also haunted, with almost anyone who enters it claiming to have felt the sensation of hands pushing up against them and hearing whispered conversations in the waiting area despite being completely alone.
Next on the list we have Dingus in Mingo County. Love that name, Dingus. This is a very small and remote community. There are under 2,000 residents, and one of the things that makes this place really interesting is that one of the only ways to access the town is through a mile-long, very narrow, 1-lane tunnel, which can be aggravating at the best of times, I imagine, and very dangerous at the worst. But Dingus also has a pretty dark history. It was a railroad and mining town at one time, and it was one of the most lawless places in the state. Lawmen struggled to keep order, and shootouts between police and outlaws was pretty common. And one thing the residents did not take kindly to were outsiders, and a lot of this was racially motivated. It wasn't uncommon for immigrants to be met with armed townspeople at the other end of the tunnel who would use very aggressive methods to keep them away. A lot of dark things happened at Dingus Tunnel, not just from violence like this, but accidents as well, like train collisions. So, aside from all the dark history, it probably comes as no surprise that many locals claim the tunnel to be quite haunted.
Next up, we have the Weston Asylum. You know we had to have at least one asylum on our list. It's classic. Back in the mid-1800s, the town of Weston was home to the controversially named Transaleni Lunatic Asylum. It was used to house and treat the mentally ill of the time. However, that pretty much meant anyone whose opinion opposed those in positions of authority, or women who sometimes cried. But I digress. While the exact number of deaths that occurred on the grounds remains unknown, local historian and state hospital expert Titus Swan has estimated the number to be in or above a 5-figure range, meaning that at least 10,000 people died in the hospital. So, like, no wonder this place is super haunted. I mean, I think we know what kind of torment went on in those places back in the day. Not only that, but this particular asylum was often overcrowded, meaning that even without what would today be considered gross misconduct, the living conditions were already pretty bleak. Today, those Those who enter the once abandoned building that has since been reopened to the public as a historic landmark have reported feeling a sense of extreme dread, seeing mysterious, shadowy figures roaming the halls, and hearing the disembodied, helpless screams of patients past.
Next up we have Sheep Squatch of Boone County. I'm kind of cheating here with this one, adding a whole county to the list. But the creature has been spotted all throughout the place, so I kind of had to. The Sheep Squatch, also sometimes referred to as the White Thing, is described as a large, woolly, furred monster with goat horns and razor-sharp teeth. Sightings of the creature started being reported in Boone throughout the 90s, beginning in '94, when two youngsters spotted the strange creature while playing in their yard. Now, what I find interesting about these reports is that the creature is always described as having white fur. Now, why do I find this interesting? Well, with Bigfoot sightings, there's usually a chance people could be misidentifying a bear, whereas here, like, what animal is there the size of a bear with white fur? Polar bears, but they're not really roaming around West Virginia. The creature was spotted again in 1995 by a couple driving down a road in Boone County. They spotted a large white-furred animal sitting in a ditch. They didn't know what it was, so they stopped to look. Then it raced towards them. They sped out of there, but found large scratch marks on their car once they made it back home.
If you're gonna do an asylum, you might as well do a prison, specifically the West Virginia Penitentiary located in the small town of Moundsville. The prison opened its doors in 1863 after West Virginia split from just Virginia, becoming its own state. During its 119-year operation, some pretty dark stuff went on inside of its walls, which earned the prison a spot on the United States Department of Justice's top 10 most violent correctional facilities list. The recreational area of the prison, located in the basement, often saw various forms of illegal activity, including assault, violation of assault, substance abuse, and even killings. At any given time during the penitentiary's operation, between 600 and 700 inmates were held on the grounds, but even still the prison was highly overcrowded, with inmates often having to sleep on the floor. And over the years, the property saw almost 1,000 deaths. Many people believe that those who died within the prison never actually left. In fact, many visitors to the grounds have seen and even photographed the shadowy figure of a man that roams the halls. And the staff working on the premises of what is now a historical site have reported being accosted while on the job. Oh, and remember the basement? Many people have claimed to have heard screams coming from its depths, but most are far too scared to go down and check it out.
In the town of Princeton sits the Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Unless you live in Princeton, West Virginia, or are a paranormal enthusiast, though, you've probably never heard of the place. It's not much of a tourist destination anymore because it's been abandoned since 1988. It's said that the park was built on cursed land, and that's not just because people have seen specters lingering around the park. It's because there were tragic deaths at the park, and the place was built on land with some pretty dark history. There was a massacre on this land back in 1785. The landowner, Mitchell Clay, had lost two of his sons to a Native American raiding party and sought revenge. He gathered up a bunch of locals and attacked them right back. Then, in 1926, a man named Conley Trigg Snidow Sr. decided the land would be a perfect spot for a theme park. Over the years, there were 2 drownings in the pool. The park was also closed for a time after a failed health inspection. Then a former employee of the park bought the land in 1988, but was forced to close it down again just a year later because of increased insurance rates. So not the best luck for this place, and now the old structures like the Ferris wheel and swing ride stand eerily unused, coated in rust, and haunted by ghosts. So they say.
This next one is pretty sad, but also pretty remarkable. In 1897 in Greenbrier County, and I can do a county because James did a county, so if we go down together. Anyways, in 1897 in Greenbrier County, Zona Shu was found dead. A funeral was held and Zona was laid to rest, but she couldn't rest, and so Zona's spirit visited her mother and explained to her that she had not died in the way everyone assumed she had, but instead she had been killed by her husband, who had been routinely aggressive throughout their entire marriage. Upon learning this information, Zona's mother demanded that her daughter's body be dug up, and re-examined. And sure enough, upon closer inspection, it became clear to the prosecutor that Zona's neck had been broken. Her husband was arrested for the crime, and the city even installed a plaque recognizing Zona's ghost's involvement in the conviction of her killer.
The town of Harpers Ferry is said to be teeming with paranormal activity. In fact, it's said to be the most haunted town in the state. Harpers Ferry played a big role in the Civil War, and a lot of both Union and Confederate soldiers died here. In September of 1862, an estimated 13,000 soldiers died at the Battle of Harpers Ferry. There were also a number of raids, one of which was led by John Brown, who's said to haunt the town to this day. Some also say that on some nights you can hear the ghostly sounds of drummers marching their way down High Street. And there's also the tale of Screaming Jenny. So Jenny had no family, no home. She lived in an abandoned storage shed by the Harpers Ferry Railroad. One fall night, Jenny sat huddled by a fire, and then a spark leapt up from the fire, landing on her clothes, which began to catch fire. She was too cold and weak to notice before it was too late. She started screaming and rushed down the train tracks for help. Now here's the thing, when you're on fire, your vision is kind of blocked by light already, so she did not see the two glowing lights of a train rushing right towards her, and she was flattened by the train. Ever since this incident, on particularly cold autumn nights, some say they can hear the sounds of screams coming from the train tracks. Conductors have even seen a glowing figure flailing in the night, only to vanish into thin air once the train gets up too close.
Next up, we have the Parkersburg North Bend Rail Trail. I'm not sure if that's a tongue twister or the title of an adult movie. But anyways, in the daytime the trail is quite lovely and pretty serene, a great place to go for picnics and lunch dates. However, I suppose if your lunch date is at a park, it's already a picnic. Anyways, you could also go for breakfast, but I wouldn't recommend you go at night. Why? Because it's haunted. Well, part of it is, at least. Specifically, the 1,300 foot long tunnel that can be found along the trail, aka tunnel number 19. It is said that a woman wearing a white dress walks mournfully around inside of its dark walls. The legend goes that she was a bride riding on a train with her groom when she was pushed off and died beside the tracks. People in the area have also reported having found human bones in abandoned houses nearby, but that's an entirely different mystery for another day.
And finally, we have the town of Grafton, which is famous for one of the strangest cryptids in the United States, the Grafton Monster, which was first spotted in 1964 by a reporter named Robert Cockrell. He described the creature as this large 7 to 9 foot tall beast with white skin and no visible head. He was driving home from work late at night when he spotted the creature in the middle of the road. They raced home, then gathered 2 of his friends to come back to the site to investigate. The creature was gone, but they claimed to have come across large footprints, and they also heard a strange, low, bellowing whistle sound in the distance. The next day, dozens of calls started coming into the local newspaper, with people reporting to have spotted a similar looking creature, and that's when Cockrell decided to write his article. Reports that the cryptid started dying out by the end of that summer in 1964, but there's still sporadic sightings here and there.
Starting off our list today, we have Beachy Head, located in Eastbourne, UK, and home to the Beachy Head Cliff, aka the highest chalk-sea cliff in Britain, standing at 162 meters, 530 feet above sea level. The area is beautiful, but it hides an incredibly dark secret. Since 1965, at least 500 people have died at the cliffs. One notable death would have to be that of Jessie Earl, who was found in 1983 at the base of the cliffs 9 years after she disappeared. While many deaths that have occurred at Beachy Head relate to either accident or intentional self-inflicted harm, this particular death was ruled as a killing, as clear signs of foul play were more than evident. Jessie's assailant remains a mystery, but her parents strongly believe that her death was orchestrated by Peter Tobin, a serial killer who had lived in the area at the time of Jessie's disappearance. Due to lack of evidence and the level of decomposition on the body and lack of DNA, police were never able to link Tobin to the crime, but considering the fact that Tobin was a diagnosed psychopath who enjoyed violating and ending the lives of young women and who claims to have taken the lives of over 48 women, I'd say there's a high possibility that he was in fact the culprit in this particular situation too.
Next up on our list today we have Molen Hill in Northern Ireland. I'm sorry, I probably absolutely butchered that. Northern Ireland is full of ancient legends and superstitions, but the small village of Molen Hill is home to one of my personal favorite spooky tales, the Headless Horse. Not the Headless Horseman, the Headless Horse. This story starts off during the period of the Napoleonic Wars, so between 1803 and 1815. During this time, Sir William Verner, who hailed from Molen Hill and was a soldier, headed off to fight in the battle, and when he left, he brought with him his favorite horse, Constantine. Sadly, during the battle, Constantine the horse lost his head. That would be absolutely devastating to witness, and that is exactly how Sir William felt. Of course, his trusted steed deserved a proper send-off, so William brought the body back home with him to lay the horse to rest, and as they say, well, the rest is history. Hundreds of years later, locals report the sound of ghostly hooves echoing throughout the village and surrounding area at night, said to be the ghost of Constantine still riding through the village.
Next up, we have the underside of Buckinghamshire, England, or more like underground, I guess. You see, in Buckinghamshire, if you look hard enough, you will find an old, unassuming church accompanied by a mausoleum, surrounded by fields of lush green grass. But if you look even harder, you will find that beneath that church lies a series of underground tunnels and chambers that once belonged to the Hellfire Club. No, not the group from Stranger Things, but a secret society created by the Duke of Wharton in 1718. By the 1750s, however, there was a new main man in town by the name of Sir Francis Dashwood, and he founded his very own Hellfire Club and built the tunnels as a secret meeting place for its members. So what went on below the earth of the countryside? No one exactly knows. It's a secret club, obviously, and all the records of the club were actually burned when the secretary died. But it is believed, and it has been speculated, that the tunnels were used for various debaucherous activities such as sex parties, pagan rituals, satanic worship, and even human sacrifice. If you go down there, let me know if it's haunted, if you find any sigils. Just let me know in the comments if you've been.
Next on our list today we have Stirling, Scotland. Stirling is a beautiful market town located in central Scotland that is surrounded by incredible farmland, and while it is filled with amazing tales from history, it is also full of creepy tales of ghostly hauntings as well. You cannot visit Stirling without seeing the incredible Stirling Castle, which sits right on top of a hill, and it is here that we start our ghostly tour. The castle is said to be the home of many ghosts, the most famous of which is likely the Green Lady, who is said to have lost her life while saving Mary, Queen of Scots, from a fire. Others say that Queen Mary herself haunts the castle and can be seen wandering the grounds while wearing a pink dress. It's so weird how like women ghosts, they're always like, it's the white lady, it's the green lady, it's the pink lady. I don't know why, it's just weird. Anyways, that was just me noticing that. Aside from the castle, there are more haunting tales that come from a more unlikely place, the Darnley Coffee House on Bow Street. This place is said to be haunted by quite a mischievous ghost, which sounds like, I don't know, a bit of a nightmare, especially if you're trying to run a small business. There's also a ghost that is said to still linger at the Old Town Jail, and he is said to be the earthbound spirit of the last man executed for his crimes at the site. It's safe to say that Stirling is full of beautiful places, creepy tales, and a ton of fascinating history.
Next on our list, we have Pendle Village, located in Lancashire. Way back in the 1700s, under the rule of King James, Britain was particularly opposed to the idea of witches, witchcraft, and women with an education. Anyways, the small village of Pendle gained notoriety as a hotspot for witches in 1612 after a young woman named Alison, not Allison, that's Alizon with a Z, Device, had placed a curse on a traveling salesman. Alison had been begging on the side of the road when the salesman passed by. She asked him for some pins for whatever reason, but he refused. and so she cursed him, and he immediately became paralyzed and fell onto the ground. Okay, so I know usually these stories are like, she can do math, burn her, she's a witch, but like this kind of sounds pretty legit. Anyways, she was arrested, along with 9 others accused of practicing witchcraft. In August, all 10 of them were taken to the gallows, and among them were Allison, a woman named Alice Nutter, 5 other young women, 2 men, and 1 elderly woman in her 80s.
Coming up next, we have St. Osyth, which is located in Essex. This small Essex village has quite a disturbing history, beginning with the story of Princess Osyth herself. Princess Osyth was the daughter of a Mercian king and was said to have been raised in a nunnery. She later became an abbess and founded a convent in what is now St. Osyth, Essex. According to legend, Osyth was martyred by Danish invaders who took her head. I guess that's a theme with me today, which is kind of a little unsettling. This legend states that after this event, she picked up her head and walked to the door of the nunnery, where she finally collapsed and died. Pretty badass, and that is exactly what led to the creepy tales of today. It is said that the ghost of Princess Osyth wanders the grounds of St. Osyth Priory, the site where her convent once stood. Her apparition is typically described as carrying her head under her arm, reliving the moment of her martyrdom in perpetual haunting. There is also a holy well in St. Osyth said to have sprung up where she fell after her execution. The well became a pilgrimage site, and it's believed to have healing properties. Some local lore suggests that the area around the well is also haunted by Osyth's spirit, who continues to guard the waters. This is only the beginning, somehow, of the horrifying tales though, as later in the 16th and 17th centuries, this place was the site of witch trials, where many women were convicted and executed on the grounds of being accused of being witches. You know, could do like 4 + 4 and suddenly you're a witch. One final thing I'll say about St. Osyth is that this site is also said to contain Britain's most haunted home, known as the Cage. This house has seen many owners over the years, none of which have stayed long before being driven out of the house by a very violent presence. They should put that thing on Airbnb and just see what happens. I'd stay there, why not? One night? What are you gonna do, ghosty?
Next up, we have Wickton Staffordshire. Honestly, the names of these towns are pure gold. What goes on in them? Not so much. This particular town is home to a particularly gruesome killing that took place in June 1972. One evening, a young woman by the name of Judith Roberts decided to go for a bike ride. She said goodbye to her mother, headed out the front door, hopped on her little green bicycle, and made her way down a quiet country lane. She was never seen alive again. Sometime after she set out on her bike ride, she was snatched and killed by blunt force. Her body was hidden in a field. There was a soldier living in the town at the time of Judith's death, Andrew Evans, who had been obsessed with the young woman. In fact, he even admitted to having vivid dreams about ending her life. And after she died, Evans went to the police station to request photos of the crime scene, and he ended up confessing to being the killer. But he later withdrew his statement and accused the police of using a sedative on him in order to obtain a false confession. His conviction was overturned, and he received almost £1 million in compensation. For those who are not British, pounds are money. Judith's death was never solved, but some people believe she was killed by Peter Sutcliffe, aka the Yorkshire Ripper, who in 1981 received 20 life sentences for ending the lives of at least 13 separate women in the area, so not a far stretch.
Next up on our list today, we have Pluckley in Kent. The village of Pluckley, which I just said, located in the county of Kent in England, is known for being one of the most haunted villages in the entire country. There are numerous ghost stories associated with the village, many of which have been passed down through generations. One of the most famous tales is that of the Screaming Woods, a dense forest area on the outskirts of the village. According to legend, the woods are haunted by the ghost of a highwayman who was caught and killed by villagers, and his screams can still be heard at night. That's absolutely chilling. Another famous ghost story involves the watercress woman. We had the green lady, the pink one, we got the watercress woman now. A ghostly figure who is said to appear near a stream in the village carrying a basket of watercress on her arm. It is believed that she lost her life in the stream while picking watercress, and her ghost has been seen by many villagers over the years. Other reported sightings include ghosts of a monk, a schoolmaster, and even a haunted pub. Despite the spooky tales, Pluckley remains a charming and picturesque village, attracting visitors from all over the world, so visit if you dare, alright? A ghost and a pint.
Next up, Fairnewford Fum in Hertfordshire. On January 7th of 2004, Robert Workman, an 83-year-old lieutenant, was killed at point blank range, you know what that means, standing in the doorway of his home. Robert was killed by Christopher Puchin, who had been hired to remove a wasp's nest from the retired lieutenant's home, but it wasn't until after Christopher was arrested for an unrelated killing that his crimes against Robert were revealed. 4 years after, in 2006, Christopher was arrested for killing a man named Fred. Fred was backpacking across Europe when he was lured into a field and killed, also at point blank range, also by Christopher, who then cut up Fred's body, placed it in trash bags, and set it on fire. While serving time for this crime, Christopher had revealed to a cellmate that he had been the one to kill Robert back in 2004. Not only that, but he had entered into a sexual relationship with Robert before doing so, and the reason he did it was because he was offered compensation for his hand in the elderly man's death. Talk about no loyalty amongst killers. He's not really a thief, so talk about it.
Finally on our list today we have Glencoe, Argyll. Glencoe is a beautiful and rugged valley located in the Argyll region of Scotland and is pretty famous for being one of the settings in the Bond film Skyfall, but it's also famous for its haunting tale. The area is steeped in history and it all starts back in 1692 with what is known as the Massacre of Glencoe. In that year, soldiers loyal to the English crown killed members of the MacDonald clan who had been hosting them as guests. It's giving Game of Thrones. It is said that the ghosts of the lost MacDonalds still haunt the valley, seeking revenge on their killers. Fair enough. Another famous tale is that of the Grey Man. Here we are again. Oh my god. According to legend, the Grey Man is a ghostly figure who is said to haunt the summits of the mountains in Glencoe. His ghostly presence has been reported by many climbers and hikers over the years. Starting off today, we are heading over to Bumblebee, Arizona. Bumblebee is officially one of the cutest sounding towns with one of the most disturbing stories. This story is one of love that ends in the most horrifying way. In late October 2003, the mysterious and chilling killing of Brandon Roomba and his girlfriend Lisa Gieri shook the quiet backdrop of Arizona's vast desert. The young couple had set out for a romantic camping trip armed with a new camera to capture the essence of their adventure under the starlit sky. Their destination was a secluded spot near Bumblebee Road, just north of Phoenix, where they planned to spend the weekend away from the bustling city life to celebrate their first anniversary. But what was meant to be a peaceful getaway turned sinister when they never returned. Days later, both Brandon and Lisa were found with their lives taken, still in their sleeping bags. Despite a flurry of investigative efforts, including a very mysterious photograph retrieved from their camera depicting what looked like an eerie nighttime scene, the case remains cold. The chilling question of who could have done this and why still haunts detectives to this day. Next on our list, we are heading over to Pinetop Lakeside. Pinetop Lakeside is a lovely little mountain town that hides an absolutely gruesome story from 2008. Chad Coker, a man with a very turbulent past marred by DV and substance abuse, committed a horrific crime that shattered the peace of this seemingly ordinary evening. It all began when William Edward Westover, freshly acquainted with Coker's ex-wife, ventured out on a first date that would tragically be his last. As the night progressed, Coker, fueled by jealousy and rage and probably some of those substances, tracked down the couple after they had cautiously avoided him earlier at a local spot. The nightmare escalated when Coker forcefully barged into his ex-wife's apartment late at night. With a cold determination, he attacked Westover with a ferocity that ended in a horrifying number of wounds. Amid the chaos, Coker's ex-wife, while desperately fighting for her own life and that of Westover, managed to call 911, a decision that likely spared her from a similar fate. Police arrived swiftly, only to find a scene straight out of a horror film. Coker was apprehended while clutching a weapon moments after committing the very dreadful act. Next, we're heading over to Vulture City. Vulture City is the kind of place where you start to wonder what those old buildings could say if they could talk, and some people swear they hear whispers anyway. Nestled in the rugged landscapes of Arizona, Vulture City whispers tales of its ruckus past, drawing the curious and the brave to its deserted streets. Founded during the feverish rush of the 1800s gold boom, this now abandoned town once thrummed with the dreams and greed of fortune seekers. At its peak, Vulture City buzzed with miners, but it wasn't just the glitter of gold that marked its history. It was also scarred by a dark underbelly of violence and lawlessness. Stories of killing and betrayal were as common as the dust on its streets. At the heart of the town stands a grim sentinel, the huge ironwood tree. Local legend claims that this tree served a chilling purpose as the town's hanging tree, where numerous outlaws allegedly swung from its gnarled branches, their lives cut short by frontier justice. Today, some say that the spirits of those ill-fated souls linger, manifesting as shadowy figures that roam near the tree at night. Next up today, we are talking about the Superstition Mountains and the Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine. Imagine a legendary gold mine that people have risked their lives in pursuit of, and that is the Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine. This place is nestled within the rugged expanse of the Superstition Mountains in Arizona, of course, which if you've been a viewer of this channel for a while, you will know all about. The Superstition Mountains are said to be one of the most cursed and strange locations in all of the United States. According to legend, this elusive mine was discovered by Jacob Waltz, a German immigrant in the 19th century who took the secret of its location to his grave. Known colloquially as the Dutchman, a nod to the American mispronunciation of Deutsch meaning German, Waltz's hidden treasure has sparked the imaginations of many. Over the years, the story of this fabled mine has been told and retold, outstripping even the famous tales of Captain Kidd's treasure and California's Lost Peg Leg Mine in popularity. Every year, approximately 9,000 people are lured by the promise of gold, venturing into the wilderness to uncover its secrets. Tragically, this quest has not been without cost. In one of the more recent and somber chapters of this saga, Jesse Kapan from Denver, obsessed with finding the mine, vanished in 2009 while searching in the Tonto National Forest. His remains were tragically recovered 3 years later in a remote crevice. The story of the Lost Dutchman's Mine, wrapped in danger and allure, continues to be a poignant reminder of the powerful draw of the unknown. Moving on today, we are heading over to Florence, Arizona. Florence looks like a lovely little town with some of the richest history in the entire county, but it holds the tale of a chilling crime with a horrifying backstory. Let's take it back to January 1984, when Robert Mormon was serving a 9-year-to-life sentence in Florence for kidnapping when an eerie twist of events unfolded during a 3-day furlough. His adoptive mother, Roberta, visited him staying at the quaint Blue Mist Motel. On Friday the 13th, a date synonymous with bad luck, Mormon purchased knives and food, setting a very sinister scene. His mother, supposedly ill, became the subject of whispered concerns among locals as Mormon weaved a web of deceit, claiming she had left the motel while her belongings suggested otherwise. As the day progressed, Mormon's desperate attempts to dispose of suspiciously described garbage bags raised alarms. The local pizza parlor owner, sensing something amiss, tipped off the police. Under the guise of concern, Mormon misled the authorities about his mother's whereabouts. Meanwhile, he sought help from a prison lieutenant to dispose of what he called dog bones, which alarmingly turned out to be human remains. The truth unraveled very quickly, leading to Mormon's arrest and a trial that peeled back the layers of a disturbed mind and a gruesome crime. Despite claims of a possible motive that drove him to violence, the jury found him guilty, unswayed by his insanity defense. On February 29, 2012, justice echoed through the halls of the prison as Mormon faced execution, closing a very dark chapter rooted in betrayal and a mother's tragic visit to a sleepy motel in Florence. Next up, we are talking about Phoenix, Arizona, more specifically Baseline Road. Okay, before you come at me, I know that Phoenix is not a small town, and I am not trying to pretend that it is, but when I heard about these horrifying crimes of this man known as the Baseline Killer, I truly had no choice but to tell you all about it. Mark Goudeau, known as the Baseline Killer, is a figure straight out of a grim crime thriller. Between August 2005 and June 2006, Phoenix was his chilling playground where he committed a horrifying series of crimes that included taking the lives of 9 people, as well as numerous other disgusting and disturbing crimes that I will spare you the details of. This period in Phoenix was marked by a cloud of fear and mystery as Goudeau operated under the radar, choosing his victims at random, which only added to the city's panic. His moniker came from the Baseline Road in Phoenix, where many of his early attacks occurred. What makes his spree particularly disturbing is the brazenness and brutality of his crimes, coupled with his ability to evade capture for almost a year. His arrest didn't just bring relief, it ended a very dark chapter in Phoenix's history, turning him from a mysterious figure into a notorious convict. Next on our list, we are heading over to Tombstone, Arizona. Tombstone just already sounds like a creepy place, and this place isn't just any old Wild West town, it's the poster child for cowboy showdowns and spooky tales. Established in 1879, this town quickly earned a reputation as the real deal frontier town, complete with saloon brawls, notorious outlaws, and the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral. But it's not just the bullets and bravado that keep people talking. Tombstone's also known for its very eerie encounters. Places like the Birdcage Theater, once a rollicking entertainment hub, now host a different kind of crowd. Ghostly figures of cowboys and saloon girls that some say never left. Mysterious voices, sudden chills, and phantom figures peering from old windows make it easy to believe that in Tombstone, some residents might have just stuck around forever. This blend of gritty history and unresolved mystery makes Tombstone a town too tough to die and possibly too spirited to ever be forgotten. Next up, we are heading over to Bisby. They say that beneath Bisby's streets, old mining tunnels twist and turn, and some believe that they lead not just to forgotten gold, but to something far darker and stranger. Like, say, the underworld. Back in its heyday, Bisby was a bustling mining town, vibrant with the clang of picks and the hustle of miners digging deep into the earth. Today, it stands as a relic of the past, but beneath its charming streets lies a sprawling labyrinth of old mine tunnels, a veritable underground city left over from its mining boom. The real intrigue, however, starts with the local legends that have seeped into the town's identity as much as the mines themselves. There are whispers among the locals about mysterious portals hidden within these tunnels, gateways that lead to another dimension, or even more thrillingly, to the underworld itself. Tales of strange disappearances and eerie, unexplained encounters beneath the surface lend an air of mystery that makes Bisby a place where history feels alive, and the borders between the unknown and the known blur intriguingly. Next on our list, we are heading over to Goldfield Ghost Town. In Goldfield, it's not just the creaky old buildings and the dusty streets that give you chills. Whispers say the ghosts of gold-hungry miners still linger, their restless spirits echoing through the abandoned town. Taking it back in time, Goldfield was the epitome of a boom town, thriving with miners and merchants drawn by the lure of gold. However, like many such towns, its fortunes dwindled when the gold veins ran dry, leaving behind empty buildings and silent streets. But Goldfield did not stay silent for long. Reimagined as a tourist attraction, it offers a peek into a past filled with both prosperity and hardship. Wander through its recreated streets and you might feel the echoes of the past underfoot. Visitors report sightings and sensations that suggest the old residents, particularly a miner known as George, might still be hanging around, perhaps not ready to leave the excitement of the gold rush behind. unexplained, truly taking the meaning of ghost town to a whole new level with that one, George. Thanks so much. And finally on our list today, we are heading over to Jerome. Jerome, Arizona isn't just your run-of-the-mill ghost town. It's a place brimming with historical charm and eerie tales that attract the curious from far and wide. Back in its heyday, Jerome was a bustling hub for copper mining, thriving with energy and ambition. However, as the mines closed in the 1950s, the town's vibrant pulse slowed dramatically, leaving it teetering on the edge of becoming another forgotten relic of the American West. But Jerome refused to fade into oblivion. Instead, it reinvented itself, capitalizing on its spooky reputation to draw in tourists. The centerpiece of Jerome's ghostly allure is the Jerome Grand Hotel, once a hospital where thousands of miners were treated. It's crazy to turn an old hospital into a hotel, like you're just asking for ghosts. Today, it's reputed to be one of the most haunted buildings in the entire state, with guests reporting sightings of spectral patients roaming its halls, ghostly children playing tricks, and eerie, unexplained noises echoing through the night. The entire town, it seems, is a stage for the supernatural, with many of its buildings and businesses boasting their own chilling stories of the paranormal. This rich blend of history and mysterious occurrences make Jerome a uniquely captivating destination for those fascinated by the past and also the paranormal. Starting off this list today, we have Armero Colombia. The story behind this town is a 20th century tragedy that serves as a reminder of the dangers of volcanoes. It's 1985 and Colombia's Nevado del Ruiz, a seemingly peaceful snow-capped volcano, decides that it's showtime. But this isn't your average volcanic eruption with just lava and ash. Oh no, this volcano went all out. The heat from the eruption melted the mountain's glaciers, creating a monstrous lahar, a deadly cocktail of water, mud, rocks, and other debris. Basically, nature's own concrete flood. This wasn't a slow-moving disaster movie scene where you can just run to higher ground. This lahar traveled with the speed and force of a freight train. Now, imagine the town of Armero situated in a valley below this ticking time bomb. Most people were caught off guard as the magnitude of the threat wasn't fully understood or communicated. So when the lahar hit, it was like a scene from a nightmare, obliterating everything in its path and leaving little time for escape. Homes, buildings, and lives were swept away in just moments. Over 25,000 people lost their lives in what would be remembered as one of the deadliest volcanic disasters in the 20th century. This tragic event was a wake-up call on the importance of volcanic monitoring and emergency preparedness, and it just went to show the true power of nature and how crucial it is to respect and understand the warning signs that it gives us. Alright, next up on our list today we have Deunokot. Nestled in the southernmost tip of India, this town was not just any town, it was a bustling port, a bridge between India and Sri Lanka, brimming with life and commerce until disaster struck. Picture the vibrant markets, the sounds of daily life, and the trains chugging away. It was a hub of activity and connection. Then came that fateful day in 1964 when nature unleashed its fury. A ferocious cyclone with winds that roared like the engines of 1,000 trains struck with merciless force. The waves, as tall as mountains, crashed onto the shores, obliterating nearly everything in its path. More than 1,700 lives were lost, families were torn apart, and the town was left in ruins, submerged under the relentless waves. Today, what remains of the town is a spectral landscape. The ruins of the railway station and the church stand eerily, monuments to the town's tragic past. Visitors to this ghost town can't help but feel a chill as they wander through the remnants. Next up on our list today we have Guy Peru. Once a buzzing ski resort town cradled in the arms of the breathtaking Peruvian Andes, this town had no idea what was in store for it. It was the kind of place that postcards are made of, with tourists flocking to enjoy its winter sports and local charm. But in 1970, Mother Nature had a catastrophic twist in store. A mammoth earthquake struck, its epicenter alarmingly close to the town. The quake was so powerful that it dislodged a massive section of ice and rock from Mount Huascarán, Peru's highest peak, which loomed ominously nearby. Now imagine a colossal wave of ice, rock, and debris hurtling down the mountain at speeds that defy belief, completely ruining everything in its path. This wasn't a scene from a disaster movie, it was a grim reality for young Guy. In just a few harrowing minutes, the town was buried under a thick blanket of destruction, claiming the lives of over 20,000 people in one of the deadliest avalanches in history. Today, the original site of young Guy stands as a ghostly memorial to that fateful day, largely untouched except for by time and the elements. Visitors to the area can still see the remnants poking through the earth. A new young Guy has risen a few kilometers away, striving to move forward while honoring the memory of the past. Next up on our list today we have Dollersheim in Austria. Nestled in the picturesque landscapes of Austria, Dollersheim is a village steeped in history, with its origins tracing back to the year 1143. Imagine walking through a place where every stone and corner has a story dating back almost 9 centuries. But Dollersheim's serene beauty hides a tumultuous past. During the grip of the bad guys regime during World War II, the village's tranquility was shattered as residents were compelled to leave their homes, their familiar life turned upside down to make way for a military training ground. After World War II, the village didn't resume its former bustle and charm. It remained uninhabited, a ghost of its past self. Yet the echoes of history linger. Today, visitors to Dollersheim can explore the remnants of what once was. A church that stood witness to centuries of change, a town square that once buzzed with daily life, and a graveyard where the village's ancestors rest, perhaps still holding on to their stories. Next up on our list today we have Kapan Chan in Russia. Found in the heart of Russia's vast and frost-bitten far eastern region, Kapan Chan tells a story deeply etched in the annals of wartime and post-Soviet history. Initially established during the throes of World War II, the town was birthed through the toil and sweat of prisoners who were put to work in its coal mines. These mines not only fueled the war effort, but also sustained a burgeoning community against the backdrop of harsh and unforgiving landscapes. For decades, Kapan Chan thrived on coal extraction, its residents carving out a life amid the extremes. However, the dissolution of the Soviet Union marked the beginning of the end for this isolated settlement. Economic turmoil ensued, leading to the closure of one of its lifeblood coal mines in the early 1990s. The town's fate was sealed in 1996 when a tragic explosion wreaked havoc, causing irreparable damage and leading to a mass exodus. By 2010, Kapan Chan had become a ghost town, its abandoned buildings and desolate streets standing as eerie testaments to its very turbulent past. Once home to over 10,000 souls, its population plummeted to 0, leaving behind only memories and the chilling silence of abandonment. Today, Kapan Chan exists in a peculiar limbo, captivating the curious and the adventurous who venture to explore its ruins, a contrast to the vibrant life it once nurtured. Next up on our list today, we are heading over to Villa Epicuén in Argentina. Imagine strolling through a place that feels like a scene straight out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Well, welcome to Villa Epicuén in Argentina. This isn't just your average ghost town, it's got a backstory that could rival any thriller. A thriving lakeside resort town buzzing with tourists, laughter, and life, families soaking up the sun, kids splashing in the water, Villa Epicuén was the place to be, especially known for its therapeutic salty waters, much like the Dead Sea. But here's the twist, nature of course had its own plans. Over the decades, the lake began to swell, slowly nibbling away at the town's edges, until in the 1980s it devoured the whole place, submerging everything under meters of water. The town disappeared, leaving only memories and submerged dreams. Fast forward a few decades and the scene shifts again. The waters recede, almost as mysteriously as they came, revealing the skeleton of Villa Epicuén. Today it's an astonishing sight. Buildings, trees, and streets all laid bare, encrusted with salt and frozen in time. It's a little bit spooky, incredibly intriguing, and undeniably a one-of-a-kind destination that tells the tale of the relentless passage of time. Next up today we have Plymouth in Montserrat, a place that once thrummed with life, its streets bustling with the daily hustle and bustle you'd expect from a capital city, and now it stands in stark contrast. A ghost town that is eerily silent, its buildings and streets swallowed by nature's fury. Back in the summer of 1995, the earth rumbled, and Montserrat's Soufriere Hills volcano awoke from its slumber, dramatically altering the town's fate. Ash clouds billowed into the sky and molten lava crept through the streets, prompting a mass exodus. By December, the once vibrant town was left deserted, its 4,000 residents seeking safety elsewhere. Though a few brave souls ventured back hoping to reclaim their lives, the volcano had other plans. In 1997, another fierce eruption forced even these resilient returnees to abandon their homes for good. Today, Plymouth is an uncanny testament to the power of nature, its buildings peeking out from the ashen landscape, a town frozen in time, with a population count that's dropped to an eerie 0. So while you can't really visit Plymouth for a casual stroll or a quick bite, its story continues to fascinate and to resonate. Next up, we are heading over to Tawergha in Libya. Oh, Tawergha, a place with a tale as haunting as a ghost story, but sadly, it's all too real. Imagine a town in Libya home to about 40,000 souls living their daily lives only for everything to change when the winds of the 2011 Libyan civil war blew through. This town wasn't just touched by conflict, it was transformed by it, earning the eerie title of Ghost Town. Schools, shops, homes all abandoned, the laughter and chatter of life replaced by silence. Fast forward to 7 years post-conflict and the image of Tawergha doesn't get much brighter. The residents were forced to flee, leaving behind their homes and their lives. They didn't go far, settling in a nearby town, but in a very different setup. Instead of houses, they lived in 250 tents. Despite the conflict and the loss, the spirit of the Tawergha community persisted, their resilience shining through despite the drastic change in their living conditions. Moving on down, we are heading over to Humberstone in Chile. Imagine stepping into Humberstone, a ghost town nestled in the parched Atacama Desert, which feels like wandering onto the set of an old Western film. Once this place was buzzing with around 3,500 folks, all mingling, working, and living their lives around the booming potassium nitrate, or saltpeter, industry. Saltpeter was the gold of its time, as it was a critical ingredient in gunpowder and fertilizers, fueling agriculture and warfare worldwide. From the late 1880s to 1930, this little town was like the Silicon Valley of saltpeter, shipping off heaps of this white gold to places near and far, and playing a crucial role in global economics and even in conflicts. Then, technology advanced. Synthetic alternatives to saltpeter emerged, and just like that, the demand plummeted. The town's heartbeat slowed until it stopped altogether mid-20th century, leaving behind a time capsule in the desert. Now declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Humberstone is now an eerie yet fascinating window into the past, showing how communities can rise and fall with the tides of industry and innovation. And finally, rounding out our list today, we have Texola, Oklahoma. Oh, Texola. It's like a postcard from another time sitting quaintly along the iconic Route 66. Now, imagine a place where the echoes of the past are so palpable that you can almost hear the hustle and bustle of its heyday. That's Texacola for you. Back in the day, 1930 to be exact, 581 souls called this town home. Fast forward to today and you'll find a drastically smaller, but nonetheless fascinating population of just 35. But why such a drastic drop? Well, Texola's story is intertwined with some major historical events. Cotton was king here until it wasn't, thanks to agricultural decline. Then came the 1-2 punch of the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, which turned thriving communities into ghost towns across the plains. Despite these hardships, Texola has clung to life, its resilience embodied by landmarks such as the Magnolia service station and an adorably minuscule stone-walled jail. Starting off our list today, we have Natchitoches. I'm so sorry, I likely said that wrong, and I'm sure that there will be some other town names that I mispronounced later on, so just let me know kindly down in the comments how you would say them. Alright, I'm here to learn. Louisiana's oldest town, Natchitoches, is known for its stunning historic district and beautiful Cane River, but it also harbors a darker past. Among the most whispered about sites is the Magnolia Plantation, where some claim to hear the clanking of chains from the days of slavery and see ghostly figures in the fields at night. Another notable location is the haunted Bullard Mansion, where the apparition of a sorrowful woman is said to wander the rooms, mourning a tragic loss from centuries ago. Along the Cane River, locals and visitors have reported unexplained lights and shadowy figures, suggesting a lingering presence of those who once lived and died in this historic town. These tales only contribute to the town's reputation as a place where the past is never entirely at rest. Next up today we have Old Algiers. Just across the Mississippi River from the French Quarter, Old Algiers is one of the oldest parts of New Orleans and exudes a quaint yet mysterious charm. Its history of maritime disasters, battles, and yellow fever epidemics has given rise to numerous ghost stories. Legends tell of spirits from different eras wandering its locales, notably the haunted Algiers courthouse, where visitors often report eerie sensations and fleeting shadows that defy explanation. Similarly, at Algiers Point, the oldest part of the neighborhood, phantom footsteps and ghostly apparitions are not uncommon. Some believe these hauntings are the souls of those affected by the area's tumultuous events, unable to find peace, forever imprinting their presence on Old Algiers' historical canvas. Next up today we have Gretna. Gretna is situated on the west bank of the Mississippi River, and it is a small town with a historic district that seems to hold secrets of the past. Among its most eerily enchanting sights is the Gretna Green Blacksmith Shop, an establishment steeped in folklore and whispered tales. Legend has it that the spirits of blacksmiths and patrons from bygone eras continue to inhabit this place, their presence felt through disembodied clanks of metal and fleeting shadows, and it's said that these spectral figures are not just remnants of the past, but guardians of stories untold, making this shop a focal point for those intrigued by the paranormal and the town's mysterious history. Next up today we have St. Francisville. St. Francisville has definitely carved its niche in the realm of the paranormal with the infamous Myrtles Plantation, a place we have spoken about many times here on the channel, and it is often cited as one of America's most haunted homes. This grand estate is of course steeped in eerie legends and is said to be haunted by the spirits of former inhabitants who met tragic fates. Among the chilling tales are those of a young girl who appears in the windows, spectral voices that echo through the hallways at night, and inexplicable cold spots that move across rooms. Visitors and staff have reported encounters with apparitions and unexplained phenomena, only adding layers of intrigue and a lot of fear to the plantation's already dark history. Next up on our list today we have Metairie, a suburb of New Orleans, and this place has its share of ghost stories, especially in the older parts of the town. The cemetery there has very elaborate tombs and statues, and of course, it is said to be haunted. The cemetery's atmosphere, particularly at dusk, lends itself to the spine-chilling tales recounted by those who visit. Some speak of seeing ghostly apparitions or spectral lights weaving through the tombs, while others report the unsettling feeling of being watched or followed. The intricate mausoleums and ornate statues, some of which commemorate prominent figures from Louisiana's history, seem to hold their own secrets, contributing to the cemetery's mysterious aura. Legends suggest that the spirits of those interred within these grand vaults are restless, perhaps disturbed by the living or clinging to their earthly ties. Such stories have cemented the cemetery's reputation as not just a final resting place, but a locale where the past and the present, the tangible and the ethereal, eerily intersect. Next up today we have Chalmette. The Chalmette Battlefield and National Cemetery. These are the hallowed grounds where the pivotal Battle of New Orleans took place, and it holds a deep historical and supernatural resonance. The spectral encounters reported here are not just limited to visual apparitions, but many visitors claim to hear the distant clash of arms, the urgent drum beats, and the anguished cries of soldiers echoing through the turmoil of the 1815 battle. These auditory hauntings are particularly potent on foggy mornings or late evenings, creating an atmosphere that feels kind of suspended in time. Not only this, but the cemetery, final resting place for many soldiers, is said to have its own eerie ambiance. People have reported sudden temperature drops and even the feeling of being watched, suggesting that the spirits of those who fought and fell are still tethered to this place of memory and loss, especially around the anniversary of the battle. Next up today we have Jean Lafitte. Is it Jean or Jean? Let me know. This small town, named after the infamous pirate, is steeped in legends and lore, with many believing that Jean Lafitte's spirit still lingers. Locals and visitors whisper about ghostly pirates wandering the marshes, sometimes seen from the corner of the eye, vanishing when approached. The lore suggests that these ghosts are protectors of hidden treasures, still guarding their loot even in death. The dense fog that often blankets the area adds a kind of visual mystique, giving the town an almost ethereal quality at night. Amid this fog, mysterious lights are sometimes seen moving through the trees, described by some as the lanterns of Jean Lafitte's crew, searching for something lost, or perhaps signaling to lost souls. Next up today we have Thibodaux. With deep roots in the sugarcane industry, this town not only bears the scars of its tumultuous past, but also carries the weight of its ghostly legacies. The Thibodaux Massacre, an event of racial violence, is a very dark chapter in the town's history, and it is believed to have left an indelible mark on the area, with many claiming that the unrested souls of the victims still roam the town. The air seems thick with the echoes of the past, particularly at night when the boundaries between eras blur. Visitors and residents report chilling encounters with apparitions in period clothing, inexplicable sounds, and a pervasive sense of unease in certain areas. These phantoms are most often sighted near historic sites tied to the massacre, as well as along the shadowy banks of the bayous where the water whispers of old sorrows. Such tales only contribute to Thibodaux's reputation as a place where history lives on, not just in books and memories, but palpably in the very atmosphere. Moving on down today we have Frenier. Nestled near the mysterious waters of Lake Pontchartrain, this place carries a haunting legacy amplified by its tragic history of natural disasters and eerie local folklore. The town's past is marred by catastrophic hurricanes that have decimated the community, leading to tales of lost souls and restless spirits that linger in this devastated landscape. Only adding to its mystique, Frenier is shrouded in tales of voodoo practices and curses, believed by some to be intertwined with the town's misfortunes. The desolate ghost town ambiance is palpable, with abandoned structures and overgrown vegetation reinforcing this sense of abandonment and otherworldliness. Visitors and lovers of the paranormal are drawn to Frenier's secluded setting, where the whispering winds and lapping waters seem to echo with the troubled past and spectral residents. And finally on our list today we have Mandeville. Across Lake Pontchartrain from New Orleans, Mandeville has its own tales of the paranormal. Among the most talked about ghostly legends is the tale of the Mandeville lakefront, where apparitions are said to wander the shores, especially on foggy nights, which seems to be a bit of a theme among these Louisiana places. Some locals recount seeing figures that suddenly vanish, leaving only footprints in the sand or the sound of disembodied whispers behind them. In the heart of Mandeville, historic buildings stand, and it's within these structures that many of the town's paranormal stories find their roots. For instance, there are accounts of spectral figures seen gazing out of windows only to disappear when approached. Others have reported unexplained sounds like footsteps or muted conversations echoing through empty rooms or hallways. These occurrences have fueled a sense of intrigue and mystery, making Mandeville a place where the past seems to intersect with the present in the most eerie of ways. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!
It's about strange occurrences that the Army has actually encountered and documented for real. Some of these encounters are too strange to believe, so click the video now to find out more. See you in the next video.